Finishing the last of the microwavable mac and cheese, Leo nudged the plastic container to the edge of his keyboard. He curled up in his gaming chair and began to surf the web. A major coding project had been submitted in the early hours of the morning, a marathon session that had left him drained. He had collapsed into bed only after the final line was written and had slept straight through until late afternoon. When he finally woke, his stomach was a hollow pit. He'd rummaged for the takeout menu he'd saved, but it was lost somewhere in the clutter, so the instant meal had to suffice. It was warm and filling, a small comfort. As a dedicated shut-in, a week of nocturnal work had left Leo severely disconnected from the normal rhythms of life and hopelessly behind on current events. Now that the job that paid his rent was done, he plunged into the vast ocean of the internet. The cascade of colorful tabs across his monitor was a spectacular sight. Perched on his chair, he scrolled rapidly, his eyes catching on a drama thread in a voice-acting forum. Since diving into the fan-dubbing hobby, Leo had developed a keen understanding of the community's turbulent dynamics. For a guy who spent most of his time indoors, online gossip was an essential nutrient. The post was from a project manager, lamenting a dire situation. She explained that a voice actor cast in a lead role had delivered half of his audio files and then vanished completely. All attempts to reach him through various chat platforms had failed. The team felt it was unethical to recast without informing the original actor, but with everything else ready to go, the final production was stalled. The project manager's post was a portrait of despair, written with a tone of tearful frustration. Below, the replies were a mix of advice and schadenfreude. Leo, feeling a bit mischievous, decided to add his own suggestion, which was not particularly helpful. He typed that maybe the manager should just find a replacement, and if the original actor ever resurfaced, she could pretend not to know who he was. Leo himself was no stranger to taking on a role and then procrastinating until he effectively ghosted the project. He understood the mindset of his fellow slackers perfectly. The thread itself wasn't especially controversial. Most people were sympathetic to the project manager, but her naive and overly emotional writing style, combined with her frequent, frantic replies, had turned her into an object of gentle mockery. The community was teasing her under the guise of offering sincere support. Leo, feeling unburdened after finishing his work, smirked as he read. His amusement was interrupted by a flashing icon in the corner of his screen. A Discord notification. Leo's brow furrowed, but he braced himself and clicked it open. The project producer, Sarah, had announced with cheerful emojis that only Glitch's audio was left to complete the second episode. The scriptwriter confirmed that Anchor had already submitted his part. Sarah added that his files were in ed and sounded beautiful. The graphic designer chimed in to say that a draft of the new poster was ready. Sarah replied that she would try to nudge Glitch again, mentioning that he hadn't responded to her last few messages. Before she could, Leo typed, "Tonight." After sending the one-word promise, he closed the chat window as if fleeing the scene. The programming job really had caused a significant delay. He decided he would browse online for a little longer and then record his lines to get it over with. Later that night, Leo stared at the script for the second episode. He had read the plot before, and the lines were easy enough to deliver. Yet, he felt a profound sense of hesitation. What had it been like when he recorded the promo and the first episode? Miles was still with him then. He would remind Leo to eat and drink water, and he would fuss over him, telling him to dry his hair properly after a shower before going back to the computer. He'd ask him to remember to take out the trash on his way out in the morning. Eventually, Miles would always give up his nagging with a sigh, realizing it was more efficient to do it all himself. Back then, Leo would just be sipping a soda, casually tossing a line from his script at him. "Your master is busy," he'd drawl, earning a resigned sigh from Miles that he found secretly delightful. Now, when he tried to say the words "your master," a strange, nostalgic ache tightened his chest. Frustrated, Leo threw his microphone onto his desk, scrambled onto his bed, and started punching his pillow. He wasn't going to record. After a few moments, the exertion only fueled his anger. He sat up, his gaze falling on a picture frame lying face down on the nightstand. The image of the day Miles left flashed in his mind. Miles had let out a deep, weary sigh. He'd pressed a hand to his feverish forehead, his eyes fixed on an empty corner of the room. "Leo," he had said, his voice strained and hopeless. "Let's break up." "Break up? Fine. As if I'd beg you to stay. You were the one who chased me in the first place. Now you're tired of me and want to throw me away? Do you expect me to cry and plead for you to stay?" Leo snatched the frame and hurled it against the hardwood floor. The glass shattered with a sharp crack. A wide fissure ran across the surface, drawing a stark line between the two smiling figures in the photograph. After smashing the frame, the suffocating anger seemed to subside. He returned to his computer and began recording. This time he was patient, finishing the entire second episode in one go. The next day, however, the project's group chat was in an uproar. The writer wanted to know what was going on. The producer, Sarah, told everyone she had just received Glitch's audio. Someone asked if she was crying with joy. Sarah replied that she wished that were the case. The director then addressed Leo directly. He asked Glitch why he had turned a charmingly arrogant character into an angry, snarling brute. He wondered what had happened to the perfect balance from the promo and the first episode, which had now been replaced by a furious, teeth-grinding delivery from beginning to end. He asked sarcastically if Glitch's jaw was sore yet. The writer was baffled. The director confessed he didn't even know how to write revision notes for this, then demanded that Glitch, who he knew was online, show himself. He reminded him that their last live session had gone perfectly. He concluded that the entire recording would have to be redone. Leo's response was a simple, profane exclamation. Sarah said she felt the same way. Then, Anchor appeared in the chat and asked what was wrong. The director immediately appealed to him, complaining that his partner Glitch had completely ruined the audio for the second episode and that the character was unrecognizable. He begged Anchor to get him under control. The producer added that the fault of the submissive lies with the dominant. The writer suggested that maybe Anchor should supervise Glitch during the re-recording session. Leo typed that he would redo it. The director remarked that it seemed the presence of the dominant partner was all that was needed to restore order. He called Anchor their spiritual leader, the only one who could smooth out Glitch's ruffled feathers. The writer joked that it was clear the submissive one needed more training. "Enough," Leo wrote. "We broke up." This kind of banter had been common since the project began. The team members were all friends from before, and Leo had never minded their jokes. But now, thinking about how he and Miles were no longer together while these people teased them so carelessly, the fire he had suppressed flared up again. The single sentence from Leo cast a sudden, profound silence over the once lively group chat. After 2 long minutes, someone tentatively typed a message. The writer asked if he was kidding. It was Miles who answered. "It's true." After Anchor's confirmation, no one else spoke. They had officially gotten together at the beginning of last year and had broken up last month. A relationship that had lasted exactly 18 months. During that time, their relationship wasn't exactly public knowledge within the wider voice acting community, but their closer friends were all aware. Yet, there's no secret that can't be spread. Soon, friends of friends learned, and their status became a semi-public fact. By the time their relationship was widely known, Leo had stopped trying to hide it. He adopted a default attitude of non-denial, and they let the information about their real-life pairing circulate freely. He had grown accustomed to the jokes. It was clear now that while their breakup had been swift, the social ties involved were not so easily severed. These few friends were only learning the truth now because of his outburst. As for all the anonymous onlookers online, Leo couldn't be bothered to care. If a person like Miles could abandon him midway, Leo no longer held any hope of finding another meaningful connection online. So, whether the gossip about their relationship status was updated or not, it didn't matter to him. It wouldn't hold him back. But Leo had overlooked one crucial detail. He might not care about being held back. But what if the other person did? Anchor and Glitch broke up? Is Nightshade Anchor's new flame? A gossip thread was pinned to the top of the forum's homepage. The last time Leo had enjoyed this level of public attention was on his birthday in March, when Miles had produced an audio drama for him. 5 months later, the situation was vastly different. Although the forum's official policy was to minimize discussion of voice actors' private lives, the allure of relationship drama, especially involving a breakup, an ex, and a supposed new partner, was too strong for the masses to resist. Any sense of decorum was promptly crushed by the burning soul of gossip. The first time Leo saw the thread, he knew it would blow up. He predicted it would start with fighting, veer off topic in the middle, drag in numerous other people, lead to several old dramas being resurrected, and culminate in a bloody flame war. It had the potential to be voted one of the most inflammatory gossip threads of the year. But as one of the subjects of the discussion, Leo was just miserable. Not only was no one comforting him for being dumped, but someone was publicly rubbing salt in his wound. If there were an award for being inconsiderate, they'd win it. A wave of irritation washed over him, and he crawled into bed. After tossing and turning for what felt like an eternity, he resigned himself to his fate and got up to check the thread again. In the hour he'd been away, the post had garnered over 300 replies. Leo had predicted the beginning correctly, but he hadn't foreseen the middle. Miles himself had replied to the thread. As a gossip aficionado himself, Leo knew that the best course of action for a person involved was to stay out of it. Remaining detached was always wiser than jumping into the fray. Responding in person was the worst possible move. You could argue until you were blue in the face, but onlookers would just see it as being defensive and drown you in the prevailing tide of public opinion. Leo scrolled down. The beginning was indeed full of arguments. Some people attacked Glitch for being consistently capricious and difficult. Others accused Anchor of being fickle or cheating, moving on to someone new so soon after the breakup. Still others condemned Nightshade as a homewrecker. There was no accusation the crowd couldn't imagine. Then, in the middle of it all was Anchor's post. Glitch and I separated amicably. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Nightshade is just a friend. As soon as he said it, the tide of comments shifted. Some fans of their pairing were heartbroken and started dragging other broken-up couples into the mess. Die-hard fans of Glitch refused to believe it and insisted Anchor must have wronged their idol. Conversely, die-hard fans of Anchor felt Glitch was far too immature and that Miles was better off without him. Fans of Nightshade entered the chat with sarcastic remarks, while casual observers, who just enjoyed the chaos, posted popcorn emojis. As Leo's eyes glazed over from reading, a thought of self-reflection flickered for the first time. Why did so many people think he was capricious? When they were together, Miles would occasionally tell him, "Be good, don't be so demanding." But Leo had never taken it seriously. On the day they broke up, Miles had acted as he always did. He came over, cooked for him first, and then started cleaning the apartment. It was only when he saw Leo still glued to his video game that he suddenly dropped the vacuum cleaner. Head down, pressing his forehead, he had tiredly said, "Let's break up." It had seemed completely spontaneous, without any. Although Leo had responded immediately without any attempt to change his mind, he truly didn't understand. Why did Miles want to break up? They had been like that for over a year. Leo opened his messenger, found the name Anchor under the favorites group, and hesitated for a long time before typing. Glitch. Hey, I just want to ask one question. Anchor, go ahead. Glitch. Why? Did we have to break up? Anchor. You're only asking this question today. Glitch. If you don't want to answer, forget it. Anchor. Leo, I get tired too. After that sentence, there were no more replies. As Leo's fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to type again, his friend's status icon turned gray. He stared at the offline notification. Tired. But hadn't you run your fingers through my hair and told me that taking care of me was what you wanted? How could you just walk away halfway? Leo idly opened Twitter. He hadn't updated his status in nearly a month since the breakup. Scrolling back through his hundreds of tweets, he was shocked to discover that nearly all of them were him whining at Miles. The apartment is a mess. There's no food. Anchor, if you don't come rescue me soon, I'm going to be buried alive. Suddenly craving cheesecake. So badly. Anchor, will you bring me some? Make me that lasagna, I'm dying for it. Just thinking about it makes my mouth water. Is my birthday tomorrow? My birthday. Hey Anchor, it's my birthday tomorrow. Anchor, you didn't come today or yesterday or the day before. Are you trying to turn me into the king of instant ramen? Stuck on XX Street, can't get a cab, just baking in the sun. Why does Anchor still have half an hour left at work? Seemed he was a little demanding. No wonder most people in that gossip thread were siding with Miles. Looking at it this way, he was definitely the one making all the demands, always asking him to do this or that. Leo no longer cared about the new direction of the gossip thread. He just stared at his Twitter history, dazed, his eyes blurring. Was it because of this, because Miles finally couldn't take it anymore, that he had left him? Without the person who visited regularly, the Shutton's life became even more solitary. Aside from taking on coding projects and occasionally recording some audio, his days were empty. Sometimes he wondered how he and Miles had reached this point, and if just a small effort to fix things could have kept them together. But thinking too much gave him a headache. To say he didn't miss him would be a lie. He had loved him deeply. But if he lowered his head and asked him to come back, and Miles refused, the thought of that humiliation was unbearable. Instinctively, Leo rejected the possibility of being rejected, and so he rejected any attempt that might lead to it. However, he never got around to recording the audio for the project with Anchor. Perhaps he couldn't recapture that natural, demanding tone anymore, or maybe just looking at the script filled him with an inexplicable irritation. So, when the producer messaged him again, Leo uncharacteristically snapped. "Damn it," he wrote. "Just replace me." And the producer did. Not every project manager has the endless courage to wait for a single voice actor, especially when the situation involved a real-life breakup between the two leads. The producer reasonably assumed that Glitch's heart was no longer in the role and promptly found someone else to take his place. When the episode was released, the audience didn't care about whether a voice actor was having a hard time. In the eyes of most observers, this was proof that Glitch and Anchor had truly and finally split. They couldn't even be partners in a project anymore, let alone lovers. It was a shame. Leo stared at the release thread, his eyes bloodshot. In a fit of self-punishment, he clicked the play button on the second episode. In the middle of the episode, There was a scene where the main character sings a love song to his partner under a starry sky. Leo's hand tightened on the mouse. So, Miles could be that gentle for someone else. He could sing a sweet love song for another person. After listening to the entire drama, he surprisingly couldn't find any fault with the voice actor who had replaced him. This only made Leo more agitated. He scrolled back to the top of the post to check the cast list. Of course, the voice actor who had taken his role was Nightshade. Leo's first furious impulse was to hack Nightshade's computer. The moment he realized how unreasonable he was being, he was overcome with a wave of dejection. After that, in addition to coding and browsing the web, Leo added a new activity to his routine: keeping tabs on this Nightshade guy. This led to a discovery. Leo actually had a strange, forgotten connection to Nightshade. The story was a bit convoluted. Years ago, when Nightshade was a newcomer, the young woman who introduced him to the community created a project tailored for him. At the time, her network was small, but she had some contact with Leo and asked him to be the graphic designer. It was a simple job, just some basic Photoshop work. Leo didn't want to refuse, so he joined the group chat under a pseudonym. When the single-episode drama was completed, the chat group evolved into Nightshade's personal fan group. However, the woman who had brought Nightshade into the scene ended up leaving the community herself. So, Leo remained in the group, unnoticed, with no one realizing he was also Glitch. He usually kept the group muted and had completely forgotten about it. Now, his undercover status was bringing him nothing but grief. Leo watched the chat in silence, feeling sick to his stomach. Seeing someone actively pursuing his ex-man, in real time was a uniquely awful experience. Leo grimly closed the chat window, ending his surveillance. His stomach was in knots. Finally, he grabbed his wallet and walked out the door. A shut-in rarely goes outside, and trips to the supermarket were even less frequent. He got off the bus and walked into the store, immediately feeling overwhelmed by the bustling crowd. He went to the snack aisle and grabbed a bunch of chips and other junk food. As he was about to head to the instant noodle section, he saw the back of a man standing amidst the crowd, holding a cup of noodles and staring into space. It was a man he would recognize even if he were reduced to ashes. It was Miles. Leo instinctively ducked to the side, out of the man's line of sight. What was Miles doing at this supermarket? His apartment was over an hour away. The only time he ever came to the store was when he was staying at Leo's place. Miles's shopping basket was filled with fresh vegetables and meat. Leo swallowed hard. He knew better than anyone how skilled a cook Miles was, how delicious his food tasted. The thought immediately brought to mind the chat messages he had just seen in Nightshade's group. This man was already cooking for someone else. All these fresh ingredients were for some lucky person. Leo's eyes turned red with jealousy. Fuming, he lost all interest in buying noodles. He pushed his cart full of snacks straight to the checkout. Carrying a large bag of junk food, he returned to his den. The moment he stepped inside, he noticed the strange smell wafting through the apartment. He did a tour of the place, from the kitchen to the bedroom to the living room, and finally identified the culprits. A collection of several days' worth of empty instant meal containers, a box of smelly socks by the bed, and a pile of unwashed underwear in the washing machine. In the past, someone had always taken care of these things for him. Leo, the software wizard, had never bothered with such trivial matters. He added water and detergent, closed the lid of the washing machine, and stared at the control panel for a long time. Hardware was definitely not his forte. Just then, the doorbell rang. Leo muttered to himself, wondering who it could be at this hour, and went to open the door. He came face to face with a familiar face he hadn't seen in a long time. His jaw dropped. Miles looked exhausted. His eyes were dull and his face was pale. He was holding 2 large plastic bags. He stepped past the messy pile of shoes at the entrance. "I left some things here," he said. "I came to get them." The light in Leo's eyes slowly dimmed. He mumbled an "oh" and stepped aside. "Have you had dinner?" Miles asked softly. Leo shook his head. Miles sighed. "I bought some of your favorite things. I'll make you something to eat." Leo almost threw himself at him. That look of helpless concern was an expression reserved just for him. But then he saw the bare skin of Miles's neck as he bent down to change his shoes, and the reality hit him again. They were really broken up. Miles came in and his gaze immediately fell on the row of empty containers on the coffee table. He shook his head in disapproval. Then he saw the jumble of socks and underwear in the washing machine. Sighing, he took the groceries to the kitchen, then came back and pulled the underwear out of the machine, explaining as he did. Underwear should be hand-washed. The machine was for socks. He then gathered all the empty containers into a trash bag and handed it to Leo. "Go throw this out." It was the first time since they had gotten together that Leo had been so obedient. By the time he returned from taking out the trash, the pigsty had been transformed back into a clean, tidy apartment. The socks and underwear were hanging, smelling fresh, on the balcony. The empty snack bags in the living room were gone, and the comforter on the bed was smooth, not wrinkled. The sound of vegetables sizzling in a pan came from the kitchen. Everything was so normal, so perfect. Leo secretly leaned against the kitchen doorway, watching Miles's busy back. Suddenly, he rushed forward and wrapped his arms around Miles's waist, holding on tight. Miles shifted slightly. "Let go." Leo reluctantly released him, his voice muffled and aggrieved. "Miles, please don't go, okay? Not go?" Miles gave a cold laugh. The look of exhaustion on his face deepened. "Leo, just hire a cleaning service for an hour a day. They'll take care of all the housework for you. But your cooking is the best," Leo blurted out. The thoughtless words made Miles's expression darken further. But Leo, focused only on making him stay, didn't realize that his attempt to prove a cleaning service wasn't enough was only making Miles feel more hopeless. "Leo, I'm really tired," Miles said, his voice flat as he stared out the window. "I don't mind hard work, but I can't stand it when the person I love doesn't show a shred of consideration for me." Leo stared blankly at the look of utter disappointment on Miles's face, a look he had never seen before. A chill spread through his heart. Dinner that night was a feast, but Leo tasted nothing. After cooking, Miles packed up the clothes and personal items he had left behind. With a pull of his suitcase handle, he was gone. Leo chewed on the sweet and sour pork ribs, a dish he loved and used to beg Miles to make for him. Why did the sugar taste so bitter today? His mood in turmoil, Leo had little appetite. He put the leftovers in the refrigerator. If he rationed it, he could eat Miles's cooking for the whole week. The end of the second month since their breakup approached. Leo occasionally lurked in Nightshade's fan group to monitor his progress in pursuing Anchor. His mood was no longer as volatile as it had been at the beginning. Much later, Leo would understand that the calm that follows such pain is called resignation. The drama project with Anchor and Nightshade was entering its final phase. Although Leo had been replaced, no one had kicked him out of the project's group chat, so he was aware of its progress. The project, originally intended to commemorate his and Miles's one-year anniversary, was now unrecognizable. Die-hard fans still insisted that the original pairing was the best. A cynical faction was now clamoring that getting rid of someone with a bad attitude was a blessing for everyone else. Leo sat at his computer, sipping the juice Miles had brought over during his last visit. He felt like a stray dog licking its wounds in solitude. The man who used to appear whenever he called out, "Honey, come pick me up," or "Hey, come keep me company," seemed to be on the verge of starting something new with someone else. Leo slumped over his desk, slowly learning to accept the reality. When the coffee table was once again covered in a ring of empty meal containers, Leo took out the trash and washed his own socks and underwear. He cleaned up all the wrappers and plastic bags in the living room and bedroom. For the first time in his life, Leo, the youngest child in his family, experienced the work Miles used to do for him, things he had always taken for granted. Without his man, the Shutton's life became even more dependent on the internet. He browsed more websites but took on fewer voice acting projects. A rumor had spread among the project managers that this VA is difficult to work with, so fewer people approached him. In truth, most of Leo's social circle in the community overlapped with Miles's. To some extent, Miles had been his primary link to the outside world. The breakup of Glitch and Anchor didn't exactly lead to Glitch being abandoned by everyone, but it certainly shrank his circle of friends. This social isolation led Leo to a discovery on an unrelated forum, a relationship chart of voice actors, shared by some anonymous user. Staring at the bright red word broken up between the names Glitch and Anchor, and then at the word flirting between Anchor and Nightshade, Leo had to admit he was a masochist. The once healthy complexion Miles had nurtured in him had faded back to a sallow yellow. The little succulent Miles had bought for his desk had withered and died. When he saw the producer announce in the group chat that the final episode was about to be released, Leo camped out on the forum, repeatedly refreshing the page. As a dedicated gamer, his internet connection was top-notch. Soon enough, he saw a comment in a non-drama gossip thread. "That drama with Anchor is just too much. They replaced the main character midway through, the original couple broke up in real life, and the new couple is constantly flirting." And to top it all off, Glitch snags the first comment on the final release thread. Is he clueless or just clueless? It's just incredibly awkward to see. A real love triangle. Why did he fight for that first comment which had nothing to do with him? Leo gave a bitter smile. Did a part of him still refuse to completely disappear from Miles's sight? He looked at the main post. The producer had written a long, heartfelt message. Besides thanking the cast and crew, she expressed her apologies for recasting a lead role. The last paragraph, though not naming names, was a clear jab. She wrote that the original character in the story was unlikable to many, selfish, inconsiderate, and heartless. He never appreciated the sacrifices his partner made for him and never returned his affection. Thankfully, she continued, the character eventually realized how important his partner was and finally learned to care for him, which was what moved her about the story. The words struck Leo like a blow. He had listened to the story before without giving it a second thought. Now, the producer's pointed remarks crystallized the reasons for Miles's request to break up. Miles had said something similar to him. "I don't mind hard work, but I can't stand it when the person I love doesn't show a shred of consideration for me." Leo slumped forward onto his keyboard. He couldn't see the nonsensical string of characters his face was typing into an open chat window. He was just heartbroken. Tears seeped through his fingers and into the crevices between the keys. This sorrow wasn't for being abandoned by Miles. It was for the year and a half during which he had ignored and devalued him, taking everything he did for granted. He had let Miles work himself to exhaustion for him without ever offering a shred of compassion or care, only ever making selfish demands. This heartache was for the belated, overwhelming empathy he now felt for Miles. It had come too late, and now it flooded him with interest. When they were together, the first thing Miles did when he came over was cook for him. Then he would clean the apartment. And at that time, Leo was either busy with a coding project or a video game, never even bothering to say thank you. Every time Leo got sick, Miles was by his side, taking him to the doctor and making sure he took his medicine, even when Leo complained he was being annoying. When Miles was sick, had he ever been sick? Leo had never even noticed. He bit down on the back of his hand, tasting salt. He was a worthless, selfish bastard. The worthless bastard then got a taste of what it was like to be sick and alone. With a runny nose and a splitting headache, Leo searched everywhere for medicine. Finally, he resorted to texting. Wrapped in a blanket, he messaged Miles. "Hey, where's the cold medicine?" Leo knew it was pathetic to be asking his ex for the location of the first aid kit after all this time. But the thought of going to the hospital alone was even less appealing. He steeled himself and sent the message for help. A reply came quickly. "Kitchen cabinet, second from the left, third shelf. Drink lots of water." Leo found the medicine, took it and crawled back into bed, falling into a deep sleep. He slept until the sun began to set, woken by the sound of the doorbell. He lay there, dazed, listening to the chime. In the early days after the breakup, every time a delivery person came, he would instinctively think Miles was back. Miles had a key, but sometimes he would stop at the supermarket first and ring the bell if his hands were full. As he thought this, the ringing stopped. He was too lazy to get up anyway, so it was for the best. He rolled over, intending to go back to sleep. But then he heard footsteps in the apartment, growing closer. The footsteps stopped right behind him, where he lay facing away from the bedroom door. A warm hand pressed against his forehead. "You have a fever. Get up, we're going to the hospital." Miles sat on the edge of the bed, pulled him out from under the covers, and dressed him in a heavy coat. He paused, then wrapped a scarf around his neck, covering his mouth and nose. Only Leo's wide, watery eyes were visible, blinking at Miles. They were filled with a mixture of shock, joy, and confusion. But for once, he was docile and obedient. Miles was still in his work suit. He must have come straight from the office. He bundled Leo out of the apartment and took him to the emergency room. Leo stared at the 4 bag above him, counting the drops as they fell. Tears rolled from the corners of his eyes, dripping onto the pillow. Miles, sitting beside him, frowned. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "Did the nurse miss the vein?" Leo shook his head. "It doesn't hurt." He was remembering the one time he could recall Miles being sick. That day, he had been craving cake and had called Miles, insisting he bring one home after work. Miles had been coughing on the phone, and when he arrived, his face had an unnaturally flushed look. At the time, Leo had been too absorbed in his delicious cake to notice that Miles was so feverish he was practically delirious. It was that day, as Leo sat playing a video game while eating his cake, that Miles had stood behind him, put down the vacuum cleaner, and pressed a hand to his aching head. "Leo," he had said, his voice filled with pain, "let's break up." When Miles was feeling so awful, not only had Leo not taken care of him, he had made him run errands for him. At the thought, tears of guilt and empathy streamed down his face even faster, frightening Miles. "Have you been seeing Nightshade recently?" Leo suddenly turned to ask. Miles seemed surprised but gave a slight nod. Leo turned his face away again. The fever came on quickly and left just as fast. The next day, Leo felt refreshed, or as refreshed as a shut-in with permanent dark circles under his eyes could be. That evening, he saw Nightshade online in the project's group chat. On a strange impulse, he opened a private message with him for the first time. His fingers trembled over the keyboard. For the first time, the man whose fingers usually flew across the keys was at a loss. After a full 2 minutes, he typed a single line and hit send. Then he immediately logged out. Just before the window closed, He glimpsed the words he had sent. Hey, be good to him. The 4th month of their separation began. Leo's fingers, once dedicated solely to typing, had developed a thin layer of calluses from housework. A closer look would reveal a network of tiny cuts, clear evidence of his struggles with a kitchen knife. After finally clearing his backlog of overdue audio projects, Leo's Twitter, which had been silent for 4 months, came back to life with a new post. By the time I learned how to use the washing machine for socks, remembered to take out the full trash can, could go to the supermarket and buy eggs to make scrambled eggs, stopped mixing up salt and sugar, could wash a sinkful of dishes without breaking one, and finally remembered to bring in the dry laundry, the person who taught me all of this was no longer by my side. To the love I never knew how to cherish, I wish you happiness. Voice acting community, goodbye. Leo had no intention of dramatically leaving every group chat or explaining his departure to every single person. He simply uninstalled all his social media apps. He was oblivious to the storm his tweet had caused. Is Glitch finally trying to win Anchor back? Is it too late? They've been broken up for months. He's probably with someone new. Who cares now? He really quit? This is too sad. I'm sticking to fanfiction. I loved Glitch's voice. It was so soft but not feminine. He actually quit? None of it reached him. The hobby had introduced him to Miles, and then, a year and a half later, had taken him away. All the regret, guilt, and empathy had come too late, so late that any chance of reconciliation seemed impossible. Leo had just finished a major coding project. He packed a suitcase and went back to his parents' home, ready to be coddled by his mother. Leo had an older brother and sister, a rarity in his generation. The unconditional love from his parents and siblings was the root cause of his entitled nature. Usually, the youngest child's return would be met with doting affection. But this time, his brother's 5-year-old son and his sister's newborn twins commanded all the attention. After a few days of trying to play with his nephew and feeling ignored, Leo quietly returned to the city where he worked. It was raining lightly when he got back, and he didn't have an umbrella. He ran into his apartment soaked to the bone. The early winter rain was chilling. He sneezed, praying he wasn't about to get sick again. After the sneeze, he looked up and saw Miles, whom he hadn't seen in a long time, leaning against the bedroom doorframe, staring at him. His eyes were wide with disbelief. Leo sneezed again, a loud, sharp sound that seemed to snap Miles out of his stupor. He rushed over, pulled Leo into the bathroom, and turned on the hot water. As he helped him out of his wet clothes, he demanded, "Where have you been for the past 2 weeks?" Leo's nose stung. "I went home," he said, his voice thick, "to heal. Why didn't you take your phone?" Miles's tone was accusatory. "I forgot." In truth, he hadn't wanted to be disturbed or found. Miles finally got him stripped down and pushed him under the hot spray. "You just leave without a word? Didn't you think anyone would worry?" Leo lifted his head against the stream of water. The man scolding him was also soaked, his suit clinging to him. Leo asked in a daze, "You were worried about me?" The answer he received was a wet, fierce kiss. Miles's kiss quickly became demanding, almost frantic. Naked and slick with water, Leo had nowhere to escape. A familiar passion rose between them. Just as he had countless times before, Leo wrapped his arms around Miles's neck. "I thought you didn't want me anymore," he whispered, his words broken by the rushing water. "I thought there was someone else." Miles pulled back just enough to speak, his voice soft against Leo's lips. "I'd have to be able to let you go first. Leo, there's no one else. Only you." That sentence shattered the last of their restraint. Later, languid and content, Leo snuggled against Miles in bed. "How did you get into my apartment?" Miles wrapped an arm around him, holding him steady. "I couldn't reach you," he said. "I didn't know when you were coming back. I was afraid you weren't coming back at all." Leo yawned. "No way, I just went home for a bit." "Tired?" Miles gently squeezed his cheek. "I'll make something to eat. You can sleep after you eat, okay?" But Leo suddenly sat bolt upright, as if waking from a dream. "You rest. I'll cook. I really know how to cook now." Miles looked at him skeptically. He took Leo's hand and examined it closely. In the 4 months they had been apart, his clueless boyfriend's fingers had acquired a collection of small cuts. "You've been learning to cook? Are these all from chopping vegetables?" Leo nodded, ashamed. "You really are a disaster at housework," Miles sighed. Leo quickly tried to placate him. "Hey, don't worry. Just give me some time. I'll get good at it, I promise." Miles looked at his earnest, anxious expression, then leaned back, lacing his hands behind his head. "What's with this sudden diligence?" he asked lazily. "Miles," Leo said, tugging on his arm, "I promise I won't let you work so hard anymore. I'll take care of you. Can we be together again?" Miles extended his other arm and pulled Leo into his embrace. "The day I said we should break up," he admitted, "it was impulsive. The way you treated me made me feel like I was just your butler, your chauffeur, your delivery guy, your personal chef. I was exhausted. The thought of being so insignificant to the person I loved was unbearable. I thought if I left, you wouldn't be able to manage, but you never once tried to make up. You just ate instant noodles every day, and then you disappeared completely. I just don't know what to do with you. I can't let you go, but staying was so tiring. I know I was wrong. I swear I'll change." Leo reached out and touched the necklace with the ring on it that he still wore. Then he looked at Miles's bare neck. "Did you really throw your ring away?" "I didn't throw it away. Just put it away for a while." Miles glanced at the overturned picture frame on the nightstand. "When did you break that?" "It was an accident." Leo felt a pang of guilt and quickly changed the subject. "That nightshade guy, were you seeing him often? Why are you asking about him again?" Miles tugged playfully at Leo's ear. "He had some legal trouble with a house he bought recently. He knew I was a lawyer and was just consulting me professionally." "Consulting? Did consulting involve going out for dinner?" "The whole community was saying you two were an item. It was dinner time. He wasn't leaving, I couldn't just kick him out. As for the online community, you know better than I do how ridiculous the gossip can be." Miles sounded exasperated. "Speaking of which, are you really quitting the scene?" "Yeah, what's done is done." "Okay. What does okay mean?" "I'll follow you." "Hey, you're really good at it. Why would you quit just for me? I was only ever in it to mess around with you anyway. Besides, I'm thinking of buying a house, and that will take up a lot of energy. Running between two places like before is tiring. From now on, you can be a shut-in at my place." "Yeah, my apartment is pretty far from your work. But if I move in with you, what do I do with this place?" "Rent it, sell it, whatever you want. As long as you pack yourself up and move in with me. I love you so much." "I know. Now let me get up. I'll make dinner." "Honey, I'll come too. Can you cook?" "If I can't cook, I can be your assistant, right?" "You don't have to do anything," Miles said, kissing the small cuts on Leo's fingers. "You're welcome to just watch." What he had once feared most was Leo's indifference. Now just having him there watching was enough.